Good morning. How the devil are you doing this one day? I need your help. I need your help. I've got I think I may have a problem with the chat this morning. I can see messages here from Dan Cullen. Dan's the only one so far, but I've posted a couple of notes myself. I've said good morning, but I've done a couple of others, and they haven't shown up. Are you seeing comments? Are you seeing comments, Dan, over on YouTube? Is anybody else here? I think the chat may be playing silly buggers because I can see that there are people here. I can see people on both Facebook and on YouTube and on LinkedIn. I can see them over on Instagram, but I'm not seeing any comments as yet. Not sure what's going on with that. Hopefully that will resolve itself. Anyway, how are we doing this morning? Hope you're all fit and well. Lots to get through. We've got a double dose of case for you today. Just well, it's kind of a triple dose actually. I filmed 2 bits at Bauma a couple of weeks ago now. Filmed one, then had to go back and film it again. And then just to round things out, I've got another case film as well to show you a bit later in the show. We've also got plenty coming out from the likes of Sunward and from JCB as well. So hopefully the whole situation with the chat will resolve itself. Because in the meantime, I'm going to roll the intro, post the question of the day, or I'm going to try and post the question of the day. Hope you can see it. In the meantime, let's just see what we get away with, shall we? Here we go. I'm going to apologise straight away because I've just posted yesterday's question of the day. I'll correct that in just a moment, but I can see the chat has suddenly started working. I don't know what was going on with it before, but I can see lots and lots of people here. So let's go through a few quick good morning, shall we? I knew Dan Cullen was here. Chris Ford is here saying, morning campers, Heidi, hi. Dan, as well can be after a great night's sleep. Yeah, me too. Me too. Absolutely. Looking forward to another awesome show. I'll do my best. Steve Williamson is here as well. Dan's got his tablet out, ready for the Mystery Machine. All okay over on YouTube. Morning, Gary. Yes, Dan can see the chat as well. Jim Turner pitched up as well. So please ignore all of that nonsense that went before because it seems to have resolved itself. I don't know. It just does that from time to time. Is that just in case? It's just in case twice. Yeah, let me get. I'll correct the question of the day in just a moment when I've got a bit of time to do it. But it is Thursday, the 24th of April. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. In today's show, a JCB 4CX Groundworker PRO goes to work. We're feeling the Sunward spirit at Bauma, and we've got a double dose of case that includes an unlikely link with the band Metallica. Yeah. Plus, in my morning monologue today, all aboard the Progress Express. It will make sense when we get there. I want to say good morning to Jonathan Duras as well before I correct the question of the day. But I do need to show you our Mystery Machine, which will be along just after this. Bear with me for 2 seconds just while I correct the question of the day in the chat. Should be on your screens right about now. Right about now. Right about now. It seems to be going this time. Right, okay, Mystery Machine. There we are. I've played around with the colours again, people. I do apologise in advance. There's a smidgen of pale blue there. Not its natural colour. But as always, I'm looking for a make and a model, if you would be so kind. Any clues on that? It's very early, I guess. Ken Hatter has just arrived as well. Morning, Ken. Good to see you here. You've arrived after all the problems this morning. Jim Turner, Funk Soul Brother. Check it out now. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I'll leave that up on the screen for 1, 2, 3. Okay, well, let's take that away because I do need to remind you of the question of the day, which is this. Yeah, that's the real question of the day. It comes from our resident quizmaster, Mr. Gary Muirhead, and his question is this: do you have any weird or unusual bedtime habits? Let me be clear, I'm not talking about those bedtime habits. I'm talking about the things that you do before you go to bed. Personally, I don't think mine are particularly unusual. I lock the back and the front door, close all the curtains, and then I take my glasses off and put them on my desk right here, so I'm ready for the morning because I'm blind without them. No bedtime drink anymore because, frankly, bladder isn't up to it. No exercise regime because, well, frankly, I'm beyond help in that department. So no, none of that sort of stuff. Just lock up the stairs, sleep. But what about you? Do you have any weird or unusual bedtime habits? I'd love to hear from you on that. Um, okay, let's have a look. Mystery Machine. Ken Hatcher says, "What other half?" Yeah, that was yesterday's question, and I apologise for that. Jim Turner reckons that our Mystery Machine could be a Takuchi or something else. It is not. Dan Cullen says he's question of the day. He watches YouTube. Yeah, I do a bit of that as well. I do a bit of that. Jonathan Duras reckons our mystery machine could be a wheeled excavator, maybe a Lee Bear. You're in the right department, but it's not a Lee Bear. Not a Lee Bear. Ken Hatcher. Ken Hatcher, obviously living in the future because he says he locks the doors and he tells Siri to turn the lights off. Well done, sir. Well done. Um, Lily Ho says rubber tracks. Thanks, Lily. I don't know quite why you've said that. Are you selling rubber tracks? I don't know. Dan Cullen says, I just lay there sometimes procrastinating on daily. Yeah, well, don't we all? Don't we all? Do you know, I made I'll throw this up just very quickly. I will go back to that in a moment. Let me very quickly say good morning to Mark Whiting, who's just joined us. Morning, Mark. We've got game over already on the mystery machine. Come back to that in a second. Yeah, I decided yesterday I keep notes. I've got lots of these notebooks about, and I discovered one when I was in Holland, middle of December. I started to sketch out the idea for like a mini book or a longer short story, and completely forgot, completely forgot that I'd done it. Was going through that notebook book yesterday, and I came across it. So I sat down yesterday afternoon and early evening trying to piece together the order of the story. And I woke up this morning, and all I could think about was putting that story together. And what we're going to do, we're going to serialize it. Won't cost you anything, but we're going to serialize it over on Substack. So you'll get, I think I'm going to do it in 5 chapters. You'll get a chapter on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and that will round out the whole thing. And then I'll I don't know, mix it all up and make it available so that you can do it as a download, uh, audio and video, and probably Word as well. So yeah, that's coming. Anyway, I don't know how this has happened, but based on that, we have a winner. Steve Williamson says Komatsu PW 148-10. Yeah, it's exactly what it is. It was a different color. All you've got is a little bit of boom there, but he's absolutely on the money. There it is in all its glory, and that's what it's supposed to look like. PW 148. Steve Williamson, congratulations. That's your second win this month, I think, if I'm not very much mistaken. Well done. Let me take that away. There were other guesses. Dan Cullen reckons it could have been a bobcat. It wasn't. Alex Latham has just joined this morning. Alex, Jonathan Duras. Question of the day: what are your bedtime habits? A brew before bed, often, sometimes two. As much as I would like to, my nighttime drinking ceases around about 9:30 because anything after that, and I'll be up all bloody night. Question of the day: Jim Turner says, "Let the dog out for a slash, lock up, give dogs a biscuit, make sure the plugs are off, have slash, brush teeth, put phone on charge, and set alarm, get in bed and say my prayers, and then nod off. Same every night." Well done, well done indeed. You should write that down. There are people online. I don't know if anybody else has come across this. There are people online who actually not only do they publicize, they actually sell their morning routine. Get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, exercise, yoga, gratitude journal. Bullshit, really is. Steve says, spot a tab boom a mile off and thought Komatsu. Well, you thought right, my friend, because that is what the mystery machine looked like. Well done indeed. There's a man that knows his equipment. Loads and loads to get through today. So let's crack on, shall we? We're back after this with JC. Now, I've got to be honest, we're doing the show slightly out of order today. I tend to put the hot new machines, the very hottest, newest machines at the beginning. For reasons that will become obvious at the end of the show, I've put it at the end this time around. It will all make itself perfectly clear as we go along. But JCB obviously were not an exhibitor at Bauma. That doesn't mean they've been quiet. Here is one of their JCB 4CX Groundworker Pros going to work.
Dad bought his first second-hand JCB in 1966. He had other machines, but he wanted to try a JCB because they were the best, or meant to be the best there was at the time. It turned out they were.
JCB turned out to be more popular and seemed to be the best that was going.
From 1960, Dad's been in business, started off working at water mains, and now it's moved on mostly agricultural contracting, but a good bit of groundswork as well, working on anything from new schools to roadworks to forestry jobs, private houses, just nearly anything. We've been advised that if we went for 4CX, it'd be far better suited to the line of work we're at. It's a bigger machine, bigger wheels, more power. There's a new machine that's reverse drive, a lot of axles on it, and a lot more driver comfort. So it's a very high spec machine. So looking forward to getting it out on the job to see how it performs. Yeah, it was a real privilege to meet Lord Bamford. I've seen loads of pictures, seen videos of him, and we've been over JCB a fair few times and never actually got the chance to meet him.
It's a privilege to be here today. Really pleased to be part of it and getting well looked after.
There you are. I wonder how many machines you have to buy over the years to get an audience with Lord Bamford. More than I've bought, certainly. Let's have a look. Dan Cullen says there's actually people, live videos of them sleeping weirdly. There are, particularly in the gaming community, there are people that actually, they broadcast 24 hours. And, if they need to go to sleep, they go to sleep and they leave the camera running and you can see them sleeping. I don't know what the point of that is, but yeah. Steve says his question of the day is weird bedtime habits. Check my alarm on my phone about 5 times before I go to sleep. Are you one of these people that also has multiple alarms? I know when me and Fred are away, he'll have an alarm set for 6, 6:05, 6:10, 6:15, 6:20. Yeah, don't get that at all. Chris, I completely feel your pain. Question of the day, he gets into bed, gets under the duvet, then decide after a minute, I'm too hot, properly throw it off, much to the annoyance of the other half, and she then has 2 layers on her. I agree with every part that you've just said, apart from the complaining about 2 layers. My wife would quite happily sleep under about 15 layers. She is always cold, I am always hot, and we share a bed. That's fun, and no mistake. Dan says, I like these old videos. Wasn't the quality quite extraordinary for that era? Yeah. Do you know, I do wish I did have a camcorder back in the day. Around about 1990, I think I probably got my first camcorder or thereabouts. And never once did I think I'll go and film equipment. Filmed me, filmed the wife, filmed the kids when they came along, but didn't once think, go and film equipment. Didn't start doing that until I got a phone with a decent camera on it, by which time I'd missed a huge amount. Gary says, looking back on some of the Bauma footage, I'm sure I spotted a JCB machine on someone's stand. Yeah, there were a few about. It was just that they weren't there in their own capacity. 3 alarms, 5 minutes apart. Yeah, I can relate. Good Lord. Nighttime habits. Eat the biggest bowl of cornflakes you've ever seen or 5 Weetabix. 5 Weetabix surely makes you a superhero, doesn't it? Is that not how it works? Is that not an official thing? Dan Cullen is having issues with his coverage today. I'm sending positive thoughts down the line for you, Dan. We've just been speaking about Bauma. We're going off to Bauma in just a moment in the company of Sunward. Back after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. I watched about 5 seconds of this film, so I'm going to be seeing it at the same time as you. I hope it's all in English. I can tell you, Sunward have got a video out called "Feel the Sunward Spirit" at Bauma. So let's do that. That was good, wasn't it? Enjoyed that. Let's have a look. What have we got in the chat? Sunward, noise machine in cab. Are you saying it's noisy in the cab? Not my experience, although I have to admit that the last Sunward that I drove was actually an electric, so I wouldn't have got that. Let's have a look. Jim Turner enjoying the music at the very least, and Dan Cullen. I've got 4 different alarms, 4 set for 3 different between them. First is at 3:15. I wouldn't hear an alarm at 3:15. There's just no way. Not a hope in hell. My brain would just go, no, you must be imagining that. There's no way there could be an alarm at 3:15 in the morning. Sorry, there we are. Ken saying noisy in the cab. As I say, not my experience, but I know you actually tried out a Sunward at Plantworks, if I'm not very much mistaken. As I say, not my experience, but listen, you know your plant better than I do because I just talk about it. You actually live and breathe it. So thank you for the input. Where are we? Oh, I know what we're doing. We're going off to Bauma once again in just a moment. This time we're going with Case, and I'm going to take you around the Case stand in a fairly weird way. Back after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Kerry Jones has just arrived and said, you're just fussy. I think that was aimed at Ken. Ken says, wow, correct. I did at Plantworks. Yeah, listen, I pay attention. Can't say the memory always helps, but I do pay attention. Surprised not seeing many more Sunwards around the UK. Yet to get a shot on one. Same with XMG and Sani, just trying to get the right contacts to do so. Excuse me, I have to be honest, I've seen quite a few Sunwards. Maybe I'm in a bit of a Sunward hotspot, but they are out and about. The Sanis are... my feeling is that Sani are a bit regional. XMG still a bit early doors, but certainly seeing plenty of Sunwards about. Now, excuse me one second. Right, so it will be explained in the video, but I ended up paying 2 visits to the case stand. I did one walk around, quite a noisy one, which you're about to hear. And it was only when I got back to our apartment in the centre of Munich that evening that I realised that one of the things that I'd been looking at, I hadn't given it quite the attention that I should have done. So I went back the following day, which you're about to see. And also, this film ends with a very brief look at something very exciting and very new. I couldn't do it justice because there was a presentation going on at the time, but thankfully, Case have done it justice. So I'll be back after this with that. Listen, it'll all come out in the wash. Ken Hatcher saying, best machine I drove at Plantworks was the Cat 8-tonner. Jonathan Dura says, I've seen a few of their mini excavators around in the Midlands area. There you are. That's Sunward doing the rounds. Kerry says loads of Sani about and XMG. Is Wales a hotspot for Chinese excavators? I wonder. Anyway, I did promise you some Case, and this is Case. This is my walk around, kind of in 2 parts. There's the Case shop. May have to have a look around there later. But there's the CX 250E. One of the smartest little demolition machines I think I've ever seen. CX 135E XRD. Tiny little high reach. Over to the X drive wheel loaders. We'll go the long way around just to give you the full walk around. Now, if you remember rightly, we were in the Netherlands just before Christmas. One of the reasons we were there was to show you this, which is the electric power pack from Z-Quip, which is actually mounted on one of the machines here, which I can't actually see yet. Ah, here we are. The CX 210ZQ, and the ZQ is standing for Z-Quip, and there you are. That is the ZQ system. There's the name of the machine. If I come round to the rear and look up, there is the Z-Quip battery pack fully installed. Let's go past their transforming data booth. Really smart looking skid steer there. Now you're going to have to forgive the lack of continuity here. I was here yesterday and I spotted a machine, but I didn't actually recognise exactly what I was looking at. So we're going to take a better look at it right now. So obviously, it is a Case skid steer loader. Nothing remarkable about that. As you can see though, has quite a unique paint job. If you look very closely, and music fans should be able to spot this, you see that name Hetfield? This machine is actually dedicated to James Hetfield, the singer from the band Metallica, who apparently is a big Case skid steer fan. So yeah, the Hetfield skid steer loader. I have to say, I love the paint job. Wouldn't it be fantastic if we could have more machines dedicated to famous people? The Beckham backhoe loader, perhaps. Over to the grader. I don't want to interrupt the presentation that's going on, so I'm going to tread very carefully. Don't want to give the game away too much, because there is something very, very new here. I'll let the lady get out of the way. Mini excavator CX20D through to the backhoe loaders.
jede Aufgabe. Also wirklich maximale Benutzerfreundlichkeit und Effizienz für Sie.
Quickly cut through here.
Diese Eigenschaften setzen
A little bit
extra
more wheel lower action, the 421G, which I think everyone's familiar with by this point.
Aber jetzt fügen wir noch etwas.
Round the front
Und zwar 100%
for the big reveal.
Elektroantrieb. Und wir haben etwas wirklich Unschlagbares. Impact, das ist also ein Name, der für sich selbst spricht.
And there is the concept machine.
Was möglich ist,
The
wenn
case,
wir die Grenzen
Impact.
von heute herausfordern, um ein
I think you'll agree, that is a pretty
sichereres,
futuristic looking machine.
inklusiveres Morgen zu schaffen. So, let's drive the future together. Ja, meine Damen und Herren, und wenn Sie noch mehr über Impact erfahren
Powered by
wollen,
a lithium-ion battery.
Produktexperten sind auch hier am Start und wir freuen uns, wenn Sie vielleicht auch bei uns
Impressive tyre set on there.
um 12 Uhr wieder dabei sind. Vielen Dank.
Rear of the machine.
Yeah, that was
Absolutely
the
fantastic
part of the
looking.
presentation. For our international guests, I'm going to
Obviously.
switch to English now.
A futuristic wheel
And
loader.
ladies and gentlemen,
Clearly autonomous because as you can see,
I'm
no
also proud
cab.
to present
Great
Impact,
presentation from Case.
the machine that redefines the future of construction.
Redefines the future of construction, the lady said as that was closing. And I want to show you more about that in just a moment. We've had lots of comments here from somebody whose name I can't begin to pronounce, naming skid steers for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why that is. I want to go back, though. Two things. Ken Hatcher has said, Kerry Jones, spark plug. I don't know if that's a Welsh in-joke, but going back to here, Kerry Jones says, I've got a Carter, very smooth little Mini. I've only seen a Carter Mini excavator at the Samota show. What do you think, 2 years ago? Came completely out of left field. I'd never heard of them before, and there they were. They weren't working, unfortunately. They were all just parked up, but they did look very, very smart. My guess is they're not overly expensive. Tell us more, or better still, Kerry, go and film somebody drive yourself if necessary. Film your Carter. I'd love to get some footage of a Carter. Things have taken a bit of a sorry turn here. Gary Muirhead says, my bedtime routine is to go to the toilet at 23:59, usually takes about 15 minutes. Does that mean same shit, different day? Chris Ford picking up on that says, Gary, I heard about a constipated mathematician who worked it out with a pencil. Yeah. Gary Muirhead says the 30-ton case with a steel wrist we got from Paul Bradshaw was an awesome bit of kit. My first excavator, I was very impressed with it. Case do some nice machines. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. They really do. As I've said before, not the easiest company to work with. I can pick up the phone to JCB, to Komatsu, to Liebherr, to Volvo, to Hitachi, and make things happen. Case, not quite so much. Paul Farino has just said good morning over on Instagram. Morning, Paul. Good of you to join us. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Now, because there was a presentation going on, because the machine was static, there was only so much I could do with that Case Impact machine. I'm going to be right back in a second to show you how it really looks. Yeah, let's have a look, shall we, at the Case Impact machine, courtesy of Case themselves. Here we go. Pretty smart, right? Jonathan Doris says, I do like the look of that and the autonomous ones from Hydromech. Yeah. Dan, I take your point. Rear end of that machine is odd looking too. Yes, it is. It is odd looking, but we're going to be talking about progress in my morning monologue today. I think one of the things that I'm excited about, I'm sat on the fence on some of the developments in terms of the way that plant is powered and designed and everything else. One of the things that I do think it has opened up, if you take out the human element, i.e., if you make the machine autonomous or remote control, as in the case impact, design-wise, all bets are off. You can start to make things look utterly unique, and I think that's a great thing. Let's have a look. Steve says it was amazing to see the big Liebherr autonomous wheel loader coming right up to the barrier. No one in the seat. It was weird watching it. If that was the UK, you'd have a 10-meter perimeter. Exactly this. I had exactly the same feeling. I was stood beside that one, but I also went over to the Hitachi stand and I was basically alongside the autonomous Hitachi machine, and I had exactly the same feeling. It's we're all being awfully trusting here. There is no operator in there. I hope it knows when to stop. I do apologise, but my phone is ringing. Thankfully, it's gone away. Great question. Obviously, Gary Muirhead is our quizmaster, and he came up with this when I can find it. Was there anything at Bauma that really got you angry or upset? I am going to show you. I did film something completely not plant related at all. I did film the food and drink situation about 9:45 in the morning when the beer tent was open, or the beer halls were all open. Which, despite the fact that I am a pretty chilled kind of guy, I did think that was slightly worrying. The only thing that upset me was the way that some people react to giveaways. Now, I don't know if Steve or Ed has just joined us as well. Ed Butler is here as well. I don't know if he experienced this at all. I was watching, let me think, who was I watching? I think I was at Bobcat. Bobcat basically had a ring, and their presentation was in the middle of the ring, and there were skid steers and telehandlers and mini excavators all doing their thing, all beautifully coordinated and everything else. And at the end of it, they were giving away these very commemorative cowboy hats. I didn't get one, but they, I would imagine they're probably produced for about 50p each. Got Bobcat on them, quite a nice thing to take away. But I watched a guy basically run around grabbing them and basically grabbing them in front of children. Mate, it's a cowboy hat. Either go and buy one, or better still, go get a life, surely. Steve says, angry, upset when it finished every day was too early. Yeah, I have to say, it's one of those rare occasions. It got to the Friday night, and we could have gone back the following day, although we had other plans anyway. But I was actually thinking, should we just go back and do a little bit more? We'd already got in the can everything we needed to do, but didn't want to leave. Does styling make a machine more efficient? No. By and large, no. I mean, we're not talking about aerodynamics here. All I would say in terms of styling is where, do you remember we went through that period, particularly on excavators, where everything started to slope? We had sloping back ends so that you had better visibility over the back end and stuff like that. Obviously, with the advent of cameras, we don't need that quite so much anymore. But that was a key thing. And I know what was it that they used to refer to on the compacting equipment? Is it like 1 meter by 1 meter? So if you were a meter away, you could be seen. I can't remember, but yeah, they went through all that. I don't know if it actually adds to productivity, but if you're not having to make room for a man or a woman in the cab, you can go and do some pretty interesting things, which I think is a great idea. When we were handing out sweets, there were grown adults pushing kids out of the way. Same with caps. You gave the kids caps, and grown adults were getting pissed off because you didn't give it to them. Get a grip, guys. Yeah, it's just a hat. Although, again, one thing I will say, and Steve would have witnessed, or Steve and Ed will have witnessed this firsthand. There was, believe it or not, there was a queue to buy Liebherr hats. There was they had a Liebherr shop, but they also had a hat shop, and you had to queue to get in order for to get your opportunity to go buy a hat. Gary Muirhead said, I had this discussion with Joe Westman of Steelwist about people who come on the stand, grab hats and goodies and walk straight off without asking and questions about the equipment. Yeah. Listen, I wouldn't say it upsets me. It doesn't, because I don't have to deal with it. But there are an awful lot of people on there at exhibitions who are basically there to collect goodies, freebies, brochures, bags, hats, pens, and all of that kind of thing, which is fine. That's all part of the game. But it's like later today, I may well wander down to my local town, about a 4-minute walk that way, just to break the monotony, basically. Take the laptop with me. Now, I'm going to go and sit in a coffee shop, and I'll buy myself a cup of coffee, and I'll do a bit of work, and then I'll probably buy myself another cup of coffee. Not that I need it, not that I'm looking for the caffeine, but because well, the cafe owner is being kind enough to let me use her Wi-Fi, and it feels like there's kind of an unspoken obligation for me to give a bit back. You would have thought that people at exhibitions would at least have a chat with the people manning the stand before they just pick up a handful of brochures, nick a hat, and bugger off, wouldn't you? Is that just me? I don't know. Steve says the styling machine is a huge part of any buy. Yeah, it is. It is, and particularly when you're talking about these concept machines like the Landcross one from Hitachi, like the Impact from Case. Imagine being the first in the world, or the first in your country, or the first in your area to get your hands on one of those. You'd be splashed across the front page of the newspapers, wouldn't you? Excuse me. Dan says, great show, Mark. Have fantastic days, guys. Going back to living the dream. That okay? Okay, video. Love the music. Love to hear it. Steve says you don't keep the merchandise out on show. You take out 5 at a time, hand them out every hour or so. Yeah. Listen, I do remember doing this. I don't know how we ended up buying into it, but in our old house, there was a lot of children living close by, and we decided we were going to go into the whole trick or treat thing one year, and we had a bucket of sweets. Basically, we didn't fancy answering the door. And one of the first kids that came along basically emptied the bucket into their bag and buggered off. Yeah. I hate traipsing about with stuff, so I rarely take anything from a show. I watched one guy, there was, admittedly, I did find it quite amusing. There was a guy walking around the Komatsu stand who had, I'm estimating, but I reckon he was wearing 12 baseball caps, one on top of another. You could see all the various colours of the brands, but yeah, he was basically going up. There's another one. There's another one. Good luck to him. If that's and no one gives away flat caps. No, they don't. I wish they did. Have to say, got some very nice comments and a few weird ones on that. That was my Bauma hat. It's been parked up for now. Anyway, that just about wraps up the main part of this morning show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue, which is all about futuristic and progress and stuff. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues, and I hope to see you again very soon, tomorrow, ideally, for the last show of the week. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will be back immediately after. Evolution is not optional. You might choose to disembark from the progress train, but that train is going to continue its journey with or without you. Now, admittedly, I'm probably not the best person to deliver this not very surprising news. The most listened to album on my iPhone was released 43 years ago. I firmly believe that men dressed best in the 1930s and the 40s, that the 1970s largely gave us the best music, and that the 1980s was the greatest decade of all time. It's been a long time since I discovered any meaningful new band, even longer since I discovered one that didn't just remind me of something from my youth. I'm not someone who stays on top of what's trending. I don't know who half the new celebrities are, and when I hear someone mention TikTok, my instinct is to reach for a wristwatch. But I'm also not stubborn enough or delusional enough to believe that my preferences freeze time. I'm willing to accept that Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift are the sound of today. They're not for me. They were never supposed to be. And just because I find them both bland, vanilla, and a bit too safe and corporate for my taste, I don't resent their existence. I don't have to like everything new, but I do have to acknowledge it. That is the price of living in the present. All of which brings us to the subject of demolition and construction equipment. More specifically, it brings us to the issue of people dismissing the new in favour of the tried and tested. I came back from Bauma 2025 with my camera's memory card bursting at the seams. Stills, reels, wide shots, drone shots, operator close-ups, each image capturing something new, something bold or boundary pushing. New brands, new engines, new power sources, new ideas, the future in motion. And yet, I know exactly what's coming. I've done this dance before. When I post those machines on Instagram or YouTube, a parade of familiar comments will follow. Some polite, some skeptical, some aggressive, and some full of that thinly veiled contempt that only the internet can truly deliver. But the most common reaction, the underlying mood, is a kind of smirking dismissal. Looks too complicated. Give me an old Volvo any day. Let me know when it can work 14 hours without needing to charge. And my personal favourite, what's wrong with diesel? To a degree, I get it. Change can be tough. It can be scary. And the thought of abandoning diesel in favour of electric or hydrogen power is unquestionably a step into the unknown. But what's the alternative? Are we saying that a 2025 diesel-powered Komatsu excavator is as good as excavators will ever get? Is the latest diesel Liebherr dozer the very peak of dozer design? Are we absolutely certain that an electric or a hydrogen wheel loader will never be quite as good as the diesel version upon which it's based? Because if that's the claim, we're not just doubting progress, we're denying it altogether. Let me ask you this. When exactly did we decide that we were done with equipment evolution? Was it this year? Last year? At the turn of the century? Did our forebears in the industry decide that the CAT D10 would never improve after 1980? That the 1995 JCB 3CX was as good as it would ever be? Such a notion is nonsense, of course. Even if the changes are relatively small or incremental, each machine update is an improvement. Each new generation better than the one that came before. And we might still look at the machines and the cars of yesteryear with a mix of nostalgia and longing. The curves, the sounds, the smell of the oil. Those things do pull at the heartstrings. But given the choice, I would pick any car from today over a 1980s Ford Escort. I would take a 2025 excavator over a 1990s Relic without blinking. If I was trying to get a job done, not just indulge my memories, I'd take a Cat D6 XE over a Cat 60 any day of the week. And this isn't about brand loyalty or badge worship. It's about efficiency, safety, emissions, and performance. It's about what works better. And yes, sometimes better doesn't roar. Sometimes it hums quietly, charges overnight while it communicates with satellites to update its software as you sleep. And that seems to bother some people way more than it should. There's a kind of weird masculinity attached to machinery, a sense that if something doesn't make your chest vibrate when it starts up, it isn't real. That if it doesn't smoke or growl or leak a bit of oil, then it must be weak, stupid. You hear this kind of thing all the time. Real machines run on diesel. Electric is for toys. Hydrogen's a fad. But machines are not about masculinity. They're about movement. If a machine can do the job and do it cleaner, faster, or more efficiently, then it's a real machine. It doesn't matter if it sounds like a Harley Davidson or a hairdryer. And here is the final piece of the puzzle. Evolution doesn't just happen in factories. It happens in us, in our thinking, our culture, and our expectations. The people who cling to old machines because they're simpler are often the same people who cling to outdated ideas because they're familiar. That kind of thinking is how industries and individuals get left behind. Progress is not polite. It doesn't need your permission to continue. The train is moving. The only question is whether you're on it or waving bitterly from the platform. So no, I don't think Taylor Swift is the voice of a generation. I don't even think she's the voice of my kitchen radio. But I do think she's a sign of where the world is heading. And I'd rather nod respectfully and step aside than pretend it's still 1983 and shout at the clouds. I'll always love the machines of the past. I'll always admire their style, their grit, and the noise they made as they conquered the world. But I won't let but I won't let that admiration turn into stubbornness. I won't let love become limitation, because evolution is not optional. And if we want to keep building the future, we just have to stop worshipping the past. There you are. Come at me, Jim. I know you're going to. I'll have a look at the chat. Is he there? There we are. If we want to stop pollution, we need to start shoveling and borrowing again. Wouldn't argue with that. Do you know, I find myself really, really torn with this, Bauma, because there is a large part of me that thinks, is this really the way ahead? You know, should we be spending our time on newfangled machines and what have you? But that is the nature of the beast. I cannot believe that we have got to a point of development where we can just say, that'll do. We don't need to worry about it anymore. I really can't believe that's the case. Let's have a look. Steve, going back to my orange hat, says that was the best cap to wear at Market Bauma. I kept track with you when you were rushing through the crowds just before we went up on the PC 7000. Yeah. Funny enough, Fred did exactly the same. I was wearing that. He was actually on top of a Komatsu dozer when he saw me coming up the aisle. Gary says, I'm the same at Halloween. I usually put a picture of Jimmy Savile in the window, and that stops the kids coming to the door. I wonder how many of the kids of today actually are familiar with exactly who or what Jimmy Savile is. I've got a cupboard full of caps. I really wear them. The wife wears them more than me, being a farmer. Keeps the hay and straw out of her hair. Yeah. Listen, I used to give all my hats to my dad because he was fisherman and used to wear baseball caps, and he really did like his caterpillar hats. But I've got them all back now in various states of disorder. Some of them smelling vaguely of fish and maggots. Doesn't make me want to wear them, I have to say. Dan says, I ask a few questions, get a few pens and hats. Yeah, absolutely. That's fair. That's fair, I would say. And he's getting picky. He tries to get the phones with the rubber bit on the end for his phone and his tablet writing. Well, fair play. Progress means more production, but that's what progress means to me. Yeah. And listen, what machine did I look at for the longest while I was at Bauma? Probably the Cat 60. Just marveling at the ingenuity of it and how ahead of its time it was. Phenomenal. Would I want one? Well, as an investment, maybe. Would I want to drive one? Not on your Nelly. No, sod that. That would be deeply uncomfortable, smelly, and dangerous. I wouldn't want any part of that. Would I want a modern day excavator, an electric excavator? Yes, please. Nice and quiet. Nice big display in the cab for me to ask about, messing about with computers and stuff. Love all of that. Absolutely. Steve says, well said, Mark. Thank you very much indeed, Steve. I know that you and I are of one mind. Let's have a look. Jonathan Dura says, I do believe equipment from the past is designed to last a lot longer compared to new stuff. It's not designed to last. It's not. Yeah, there is that concern about what do they call it? Is it designed obsolescence? So have you noticed that you get a 2 or a 3 year contract with your phone, and as soon as that's up, your phone starts to go wrong or the battery starts to let you down? Same with cars. Cars traditionally have been built with 3 year and 4 year lease periods in mind. You get to the 4th year and all of a sudden bits start to fall off it. There is a degree of that. I wouldn't argue with that one bit. But even if you're talking about those little incremental changes, some of those changes are more aesthetic. They're more in keeping with software and systems rather than hardware. Each one is better than the last. If anyone, and this is a challenge. I mean, I've never actually heard this, but I'm going to throw it out there. Have you ever had a new machine, excavator, dozer, grader, wheel loader, whatever it is, a new machine that in your opinion was not as good as the one that it replaced? We've got a slight issue with my other half's car. We lease her car. And the last one that we had, she's got a Kia Sportage. And the last one that she had a few bits and pieces. For example, it had electric seat controls, so you could slide the seat back and forth. She's only 4'11", so she drives like this, and I drive like that. So we switch the seat around. When we got the new model, they'd done away with the electric seat system, and they'd gone to a manual one. That's not because the car got worse. It turned out that me being a stingy git that I am, when I negotiated the lease terms, I'd actually gone down a grade of car. So rather than getting the one with all mod cons, I'd gone for the one slightly below that. And one of the things that I surrendered, unknowingly, should I say, was precisely that. It was the electric controls on the seat. Not a big deal because I don't drive very often anyway, so not a big deal. But have you ever had a machine that was worse than the one that it replaced? Love to hear from you on that. There's no reason why an electric or other fuel machine should not perform as well as a conventional powered machine as the motor drives the pumps and gearbox. Yeah. Although in some cases that's not going to be the case much longer, is it? You've got entirely dry machines now, or they're coming at least. Do you still have your lockup with all the hats and goodies in storage? I do have the lockup. Yes, I absolutely do. Not much in the way of goodies up there. My son moved out, as you know, I don't know, whatever it was, 6 months ago. So I brought some stuff back from storage, basically to give me more ready access. Most of the goodies that I have are actually sat in this office. I do need to get them out because this office is an absolute pigsty at the moment. Because it's just inside the front door, it is like the repository for the house. We've got a cardboard box. Where should we put that? I'll throw it in the old man's office, and I'm surrounded by cardboard boxes and bits of shit. So the plan, my wife is away, as I've told you before, my wife is away, not this Saturday, but the Saturday after. She's off to Greece for a few days with my youngest daughter. I'm going to take a day. Going to go and meet up with Dan Cullen, hopefully, to give him his prizes, his collection of prizes for the past few months. But I'm also going to take a bit of time to sort out this office and basically free up some workspace, because this thing here, there's a table there, which I did for a little while. I used to do like analog writing. I would actually sit there and write by hand, with a pen. You remember those? One of those. Used to write with pen and paper. Haven't got the room to do it anymore. Jim Turner says, yes, Mark, this new Hitachi is not as good as the last two models before it. Well, I am shocked, but I'm shocked. I'm just going to stop there. I'm shocked. I honestly can't say I've driven a machine and thought I'd prefer the older one. I'm all for tech and the updates. Electric handles on machines are amazing. The EC230 has a brilliant, less movement and light on the sticks. No problem with grading or bump shifting material. I look at now and the future and not the past. That's just me. I think there's a time and a place. If bearing in mind my first car was a Volkswagen Beetle, if I'm walking along the road and there's a Beetle parked up, I have to stop and have a look. It's almost like a muscle memory thing. I have to stop and I have to have a look. My daughter for a while worked at the RAC club, and they used to have these vintage car rallies start there, and I was a big fan of going to vintage car rallies just to look at the old shiny machines and the cars. Not because I wanted to drive one. I want power steering and GPS and sat nav and all the things, just to look at them. I'll come back to that thought in just a moment. A certain yellow machine manufacturer close to me put a glass door and torque converter, which was crap, into a machine. It didn't last long before it was altered. A certain yellow machine manufacturer. I said I was going to mention this, and I will be mentioning it more in full because I know we've lost some of our people, but let's have a look. Put this up on the screen. My mate Dave Paget down at Kent Demolition is doing, we're talking about vintage equipment. And I can't actually read it from there. Bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to get to a point where I can see it. So Dave Paget has got a 75-year-old British-built Nuffield tractor, and he has restored it down at his yard in Rootham in Kent. And on the 31st of May, he is planning to drive it about 400 miles from Rootham up to Birmingham, which is basically where the machine was built. And he's doing it in favour, or in aid rather, of food banks and that kind of thing. One of the reasons I'm interested in it is because one of the stops along his way, and one of the main reasons he's doing it, is Didcot. Yes, he's going to Didcot. But he's going to make 3 or 4 stops on the way up. if anybody's into vintage tractors and you happen to be in that part of the world, let me know, and I'll put you in touch with Dave, and maybe you can spot the thing going along the line. I've actually dropped a line very early this morning to Adrian McLean up at Armac Demolition. Oh, excuse me, Armac Demolition, because part of Dave Paget's route actually goes pretty much past Armac's front door. And I know Adrian likes his old kit. So, yes, if you fancy spotting an old tractor doing its thing, if you fancy making a donation to Dave Paget, let me know and I'll put you in touch. Steve says, I like older machines. They're unique and vintage, but I'd never swap it for what I'm on now. No, me either. And I'm exactly the same with cars. Exactly the same with cars. We don't have a future without having a past. No, absolutely. But I think if you are to truly embrace the future, you kind of need to let go a bit of the past. And I think that the ultimate version of that is this switch of power. Yes, I love the smell of a diesel engine. I love the smell of oil, which makes me weird. I realize I love that. I love that little puff of black smoke when you start up an older machine. I love the chug, chug, chug of the engine. I love all of that. Given the choice, I'd work on an electric machine any day of the week. Silence, just and complete and total control. You know, you twitch your hand, the machine twitches with you. You are in complete connection with that machine. Steve says, we don't have a future without a past, but if you still live in the past, you won't have a future. It's like broadcasting to poets at times around here. Really is. And Steve says, me too, Mark. Yeah. Listen, if I wanted a machine just to admire, just purely to admire, yes, I'm thinking an RB22, an old Cat D10 or something like that, Cat 60, an old red and yellow JCB 3CX, just to look at. Yeah, to do a day of work, yeah, I'm thinking as modern as I can possibly get, and ideally electric. Just saying. Anyway, people, that's an hour. Last show of the week tomorrow. Lord alone knows what I'm going to be talking about then, but I'll come up with something. Chris Ford says the problem with the past, rose-coloured glass. You only remember the good bits. Yeah, it's true enough. Yeah, and again, you know that you look back fondly at machines of the past. Oh, look at the engineering on it. Yeah, but you were sat on a chunk of wood. You didn't have a cab. If it rained, you got wet. You were constantly breathing in diesel fumes and so on. Yes, it looked lovely. Yes, it sounded lovely. Yes, you could fix it with a spanner and a sledgehammer. All of those things are true. Not as much fun as you might think. I've said it before. I bought a Porsche 944 on a whim once, part of my midlife crisis, that it also included piercings and tattoos. I won't dwell on that. And for the first 6 months, the car was the greatest thing ever. And then you start to realize it's really uncomfortable and really hot and really smelly, and driving it is really fucking hard work. At which point I decided my midlife crisis was over and sold it for exactly the same that I paid for it. So yeah, there we are. Anyway, people, what you did in the past on older machines was the best at the time, not now. No, the same is not true of music, of course. Music from the 1980s is better than now. And I want to end the show now before people tell me the error of my ways. Everybody, have a great day. Look after yourselves. I'll see you tomorrow for yet more of the same. Till then, have a good one. All the best.